Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is a follow-up to the video about Michael West, and this was I discovered this thanks to the Blind Injustice Facebook page. If you're not in the Blind Injustice Facebook page, I would strongly suggest join it. It's the one that's obviously started by Mark Godsey of Oklahoma, who obviously, Ohio Innocence Project, that's it. But obviously he was the one that wrote the book Blind Injustice, which is very, very good. And obviously Mark Godsey, a former prosecutor, a sort of self-confessed Ken Kratz type prosecutor, who then realized the harm he was doing and became the leader of the Ohio Innocence Project. So as I say, strongly recommend join the Facebook page, the Blind Injustice. I'll leave the link to it, and also to this article, which was in the pointed out by Mark Godsey. I'll say kind of like a follow-up to the article by Radley Balco about Michael West. Exonerated man sues former Tampa police forensic dentist who put him in prison. Robert Dubois was wrongfully convicted of murder based on bite mark evidence. He was freed last year after 37 years. Pictured at his new home in September in Tampa. An article by Dan Sullivan, Tampa Bay Times. Tampa. Robert Dubois, who lost 37 years of his life for a crime he did not commit, is suing the former Tampa police officials and the forensic dentist who helped send him to prison. So immediately I'm thinking in terms of Michael West, and I'm thinking, I don't think he ever got down as far as Tampa. Anyway, a lawsuit filed this week in federal court accuses 3 former detectives, a former police sergeant, and a forensic dentist of fabricating bite mark evidence that falsely implicated Dubois in the 1983 murder of Barbara Grams. Dubois spent 3 years on death row in the 1980s before his sentence was reduced to life in prison. In 2020, newly tested DNA evidence proved he did not commit the crime. Now 56, Dubois was freed from prison in August 2020. He seems quite happy there. Attorney Susan Friedman is pictured with her client, Robert Dubois, at the conclusion of a press conference held by the Innocence Project and the state attorney following a hearing to exonerate Dubois after he was released from prison, where he served 37 years for a crime he did not commit. His lawsuit names as defendants retired Tampa police detectives Philip Saladino and K.E. Burke, former Sergeant R.H. Price, and the estate of the late detective John Kainsman, along with the city itself, and Dr. Richard Sauviron, a forensic dentist who testified in Dubois' 1985 trial. Now, of course, we've come across Richard Sauviron because he was the one that was described as a whore by Michael West, was on that Innocence, the Innocence Project's documentary on Netflix, The Innocence Files. And of course, was famous for actually helping to convict Ted Bundy. But since, I would say, has softened his approach as a odontologist to accept the fact that, even the experts themselves can't even agree on what a bite mark is. Just completely bogus science. But it's interesting that he's going after Richard Sauviron as well. Grams was 19 when she was attacked while walking home from a restaurant job at a Tampa shopping more. A gardener found her body the morning of August 19th in the yard outside a dental office. She had been raped and beaten. The investigators fixated on a circular wound they identified on her cheek, which they believed was a bite mark. They took teeth molds of several people they considered suspects, including Dubois, whose teeth they later claimed matched the mark. In 2020, the Hillsborough State Attorney's Conviction Review Unit located untested DNA samples from a rape kit in the case. When tested, the DNA did not match Dubois. It did match someone else who officials have said is now a person of interest in the murder. That person has not been publicly identified. A different dentist re-examined the bite mark evidence and concluded the wounds on Graham's cheek was not from a bite after all. Bite mark evidence in recent years has come to be regarded as unreliable. I would say that's putting it mildly. The 34-page complaint details an alleged conspiracy to fabricate bite mark evidence. It alleges that the detectives were followers of Sauveron, who at the time was a foremost expert in forensic odontology. He famously testified in the murder trial of Ted Bundy, identifying the serial killer's teeth as a match to a bite mark on one of his victims. The complaint states that Sauveron spoke at a conference of the International Association of Chief Police sometime before Dubois' murder trial. It includes several quotes attributed to him, including, "If you tell me that is the guy that did it, I will go into court and say that is the guy that did it." Wow. Burke and Saladino reached out to Sauveron in September 1983 for help in the Graham's murder case, according to the complaint. Sauveron later reviewed the supposed bite mark evidence and told them they were looking for a person with a missing front tooth or gap between the upper front teeth. Dubois' teeth did not have such a gap, the complaint stated. Police would later use beeswax, to make a mold of Dubois' teeth, a method that even in 1983 was not considered a proper way to create a tooth mold for a bite comparison mark, according to the complaint. That's interesting. Beeswax is what's traditionally used in accordions to keep the reeds in their reed blocks. Why it's beeswax, I don't know. But, anyway, Sauveron concluded that the supposed bite mark was a match to Dubois. The complaint also alleges that the detectives conspired with Claude Butler, who was in jail at the same time as Dubois. Butler would later testify as a jailhouse informant, claiming that Dubois confessed to him. They met with Butler several times, fabricating a story of a supposed confession. According to the complaint, Butler's account of the confession was inconsistent, the complaint states. Jailhouse informant testimony has also been deemed problematic in recent years, having been cited as a frequent factor in wrongful convictions. Though prosecutors still sometimes rely on jailhouse informants to obtain convictions. A spokesman for the city of Tampa declined to comment on the lawsuit. Efforts to reach the surviving retired officers by phone were not successful. Sauveron did not return a message left for comment at his Coral Gables dental office. When news of Dubois' exoneration came last year, Sauveron told the Tampa Bay Times he would not testify with the same certainty now as he did in 1985. From a human point of view, of course, I feel terrible, Sauveron told the Times in 2020. I played a part in his conviction. There's no question I feel terrible. Well, you know, he does come across as a reasonable person. And I think it's fair enough what he's saying there. The lawsuit was filed by attorneys with the Human Rights Defense Center, a non-profit organization that advocates on behalf of incarcerated people. It seeks unspecified compensatory and punitive damages. It comes as a pair of bills that aim to compensate Dubois remain pending in the Florida legislature ahead of the 2022 lawmaking session. If passed, the bills would give Dubois 1.8 million. Is that all? For the years he spent wrongfully incarcerated. A similar bill was filed earlier this year, but died before a vote could occur. Unfortunately, that claims bill does not appear to be moving at all, said Daniel Marshall, one of the attorneys representing Dubois. Given the lack of movement on the claims bill, we're pursuing alternative avenues. Yeah, I think some of these states have incredibly either low compensation or no compensation whatsoever. If you're exonerated, you're simply allowed out, and that's it. You know, you shouldn't have got yourself tied up in this in the first place. Anyway, interesting that Robert Sauvinon is, you know, what he said, and I think we can accept that. You know, he's one of the ones that realizes that. I think the best, at best, the only thing you can do with a bite mark is measure it and say, you know, that, well, it definitely isn't that person because it's too narrow or it's too wide or there's, you know, too many teeth or too few teeth. I only think you can use bite mark analysis in a very limited way, simply to exclude somebody, but certainly not to prosecute, and certainly not the way Michael West did it. That was ridiculous. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that particular article. As I say, I'll try and pop links to the Blind Injustice Facebook page and that particular article, and we'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.